about is, earlier today we heard about how not everyone's on 142 yet. A lot of people aren't on 142. So I'm talking about features and gadgets that got released with 142, and I think they're very cool. And at WikiGG, we are not on 142, we're on 141, but we backported a bunch of this. And I want to convince you that even if you aren't, you hopefully will be on 143 soon, but even if you are a little bit farther behind, I want to convince you that this is worth backporting, or maybe upgrade to 143 now, soon, when it's released. So a caveat about CSS that my platform engineer made me write is that he does not like CSS only gadgets because resource loader comes with too much overhead. And you can use the extension template styles instead. Personally, I don't love template styles because the linter, the validator is a little bad, and even with like the better validator that you can install for template styles, it's still a little bad. My personal preference is to put CSS only gadgets also and use gadgets for any kind of code organization when we're talking about like CSS and JS. But you do have to be aware that there's going to be a performance degradation compared to using template styles if you're doing CSS only. So my example is going to use JavaScript, and my recommendation is that this is if you need to do targeted JavaScript specifically. And just a note that if you do want to put both your styles and your scripts into a gadget, you might need to make two separate gadgets for the same template, one of them loading the JavaScript and one of them loading the CSS, and the CSS one would have type equals styles so that it gets put in the header instead of loaded late with resource loader. Okay, so how does it work? This is the outline of what you would need to do. So the key feature, the awesome feature that gadgets got in 142 is categories. So this is a parameter that you can use when you're setting up the gadget, and you could already restrict based on like user rights. So, and I do mean rights, not groups. So you can make a particular gadget only available if someone has the edit right, or only if they have the delete right, if you want to try and target it as sysops only. And a new parameter that got added to that little options slug that you get to put in the middle of your gadget is categories. And please, if you are looking at the subpage gadgets that are coming in 143, please don't get confused between category, which is different, and categories, which is what I'm talking about today. They are different parameters, they mean totally different things, and they're both used in the new JSON schema. We're not talking about that today, but don't get confused like I did. So this is categories, plural. Even if you're only restricting it to one single category, it's still categories, plural. And this you would do at MediaWiki gadgets definition. Remember, plural us, singular definition, gadgets definition. All of this is going to change a little bit in terms of like where you define stuff, starting with 143 and gadget subpages, but that's a bit out of scope for today because I didn't sign up for a talk on time. And then you may have to purge the cache of all of your pages if you are newly adding this code separation. So part one is to add a category. So over here we have an example template, which we're saying is template timer. There's going to be some actual code here. Right now, obviously, if you ran this, it would print your, because I typoed, your template content goes here. Is what it would actually output, but pretend that there's like some thing here to generate a timer. And a timer is a good example of something that you might want to use this strategy for, because timers require a bunch of code. Most likely, you're going to have to run a jQuery selector at the start of every page load to see if there actually is indeed a timer on that page. And so that's just one extra thing that you have to do in JavaScript when JavaScript loads, and it might stop something else that is impactful from happening, and we just really don't like loading and running JavaScript unless we actually have to. And if you updated your code and you introduced a bug, then the bug would be deployed on the entire wiki if you put it into common.js, and if you do it in gadgets, then it would only happen on the actual pages with timers. So lots of reasons that you don't want to shove everything into common.js, and now you can target categories better. So the second, and then notice that at this template, can you see my, Okay, now my cursor's hidden. So you can actually see that pages with timers category, and that's going to have to be here. Everything is going to be built around the fact that we're going to now have this category, pages with timers. So then at that category, and you can call it anything you like. I like calling pages with something that's like pages with DPL parser functions, pages using whatever. You could say pages using timers. Call it whatever you want. Just be specific or be consistent in your choice. So we're going to say pages with timers, and then we use hidden cat because this category is actually not intended for user consumption, and it's also not really a tracking category. It's literally just here because it was decided not to make a templates parameter in gadgets, and instead they made categories. And since they made categories, we got to make a hidden category for every template. So then I also would like to categorize each of these categories as categories for gadgets, so that categories for gadgets contain all of the categories that are for gadgets, and then that just helps you, that helps your maintenance, so that when you're gone, the next person doesn't say, what is this category doing? And then deletes it, and then all of the code works, and they're like, why isn't the code working? So, self-documenting. So this is what you would put at the timer. I've written a very complicated, complex logic here, guaranteed to work in any circumstance whatsoever. No matter what you want the timer for, you can use this and just make them open the page at the right time. So this is the timer. Obviously, you put whatever JavaScript you want here. Generally, timers are going to be a lot of code, so you have to send the extra bundle there. And so you just don't want the timer to be imported on every single page. And also usually a timer will only be for like 3 pages total. So I think a timer is like a really good example of a gadget that or of a snippet of JavaScript that you would actually want to do this for. And then the next thing is that at gadgets definition, again, gadgets definition, it's not gadget definitions, it's gadgets definition. We make our, and then of course here it's gadget singular hyphen timer. Don't get confused. Okay. So this is our timer definition, and it's compatible with resource loader, and then it's going to be default and hidden because this is not actually user preference. We're not using gadgets here. Like normally when you write a gadget, the reason is that a user might want to opt in or opt out of it, or maybe you want to restrict it to a certain user class or something. This is actually part of our core code on the wiki, and we don't want users to be able to turn it off. We don't want a user to go like, what, this timer gadget? I don't want a timer gadget, and then they turn it off. And then you get a support ticket a year later. Why aren't the timers working on this wiki? So don't even give them the option to turn it off. It's default, it's always enabled, it's hidden, they can't turn it off. And then it's restricted to categories, pages with timers. That category is the category that we put here. So just make them match, and then it doesn't matter what you call it. And then the timer.js at the end is to include this page with gadget singular. And then finally, you purge your cache on all. So if you haven't yet implemented any timer and you're doing this from the very start, you're done. You don't have to do anything else. But if your gadget.js is currently in common.js and you're doing a refactor, then you're going to have to go back and purge every single page that includes this template, because otherwise the HTML cache won't be updated and it won't know that it has to load this extra gadget and nothing will break, and people are like, why isn't the wiki working? And then you do the purge cache and they're like, can you refresh and try again? And then you like gaslight your user base that it actually was working before. So just purge cache. You can do that easily with PWB. And that's it, you're done. So instead of doing an outro now, I'm gonna talk about my other thing. How much time do I have left? Do I have like 5 minutes? 5 minutes?
You should have had a timer.
I have no time. 2 minutes? hey, Ed, I have the timer. It's right here. It's right here.
It's time.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Let me, you still have, there we go, great. Fantastic. Okay, so this second talk was completely not prepared at all until 2 nights ago. I was talking with Cindy and Brian, and we were looking at the schedule, and we saw something about like extension versioning, and so then we were chatting like, what could extension versioning be? And then we came up with this idea. So this is actually like now a relatively serious proposal. I think this is actually a really good idea for how to start doing numbering of extensions. And I'm not going to full screen because I need the speaker notes. So like with extensions, multiple people have talked about semantic versioning, which is like when you have breaking change, major, minor. And that's how most MediaWiki extensions are with like the three, you have like breaking, okay, so like breaking, major, minor, major, minor, bug fix. So major, minor, bug fix, and then breaking changes are allowed in major. But then you have an issue, and you can just see my speaker notes at the bottom. So pretend that we have this timeline. And so 143 is about to come out, so we're going to make our val 143 branch. And everyone's happy, our extension is working great. 143 happens, it's now a year later, so it's now like January 2026. And we are in rel 145 because it's 2026. And then we make a new feature and we're like, oh, this feature is awesome. Everyone should have this. So then we go, and that new feature actually isn't, like, you don't have to have MediaWiki 1.45 for that feature to work. So then we really want to backport this feature in the extension to all of the previous versions of MediaWiki, like all of the previous release branches of our extension. And we want to say, okay, well, if you're on 143, maybe you can't have the current 145 release branch of my extension, but I backported this super awesome extension to 143. So now the question is, what version is that extension? Like what version is that? What version is the backport of the cool new feature to 143? And there's not really, well, I think there is an answer, which is this, but as it stands, there's not really an answer because 145 is gonna be like, say we're at like 6.3.2 in 145. And that means that everything lower than 6.3.2 has already happened, and it's not going to have the new feature because the earliest branch that the new feature is in is 6.3.2. And the old release branch, like, you can't exactly increment that and still, like, that happened in the past. So my proposal is that we should break away from the 3-digit 2-dot numbering for extensions, and then basically we'll prepend the MediaWiki version to every extension version. Originally, I was thinking like it could be with dots, but then like we don't want to be confusing about semantic versioning, so this is maybe a little confusing, and we want to use underscores. So 1_43 is going to be the release version of MediaWiki that you're targeting. And the important thing now, the very important thing, is that every time there's a new release of MediaWiki that you're targeting, you have to re-release your extension at 1.0.0, or if you're at like 0.1.0 or something, if you're not ready for a 1.0 release, that's fine too. So you will re-release your extension as 143 1.0.0, and then on the 143 release branch, you'll keep ticking up this version. So if nothing is compatible with 142 or earlier anymore, then we're never going to touch 142 or earlier. We're just going to keep bumping up the version within 143. But then say we do want to end up backporting something. So we have we fix a typo in an I18N string, okay? We fix a typo and then we want to backport that typo fix to 142 and to 141. So let's say that prior to 143 releasing, we were at 142. I'll say 5.0.0. So we have the typo fix in the localization string, and then we're going to bump that to 142.501. So 143 is on version 1, 142 is on version 5.0.1, and then the answer to, okay, if I'm using version X of MediaWiki, what version of the extension should I get? The answer is always the highest version, the highest release number that's prefixed with your MediaWiki version. And so because this is an alternative to semantic versioning, my proposal is to call this the relational versioning scheme, which coincidentally, MediaWiki release branches are underscored with like REL underscore. So we'll just make that stand for relational versioning. We got REL, we got an alternative to semantic versioning, and that's what I think we should start doing.
Questions, comments? Yes.
Sorry, so just to confirm that I'm understanding correctly, if in 2 weeks or whenever 1.43 is cut, if you continue supporting 1.42, you'll have 142 5.0.1, and you'll also have 143 1.0.0.
Yeah.
And those refer to essentially the same code, even though you're at 1.0 for the 43 version and 5.0 for the 42 version?
Yes, and I think this is actually a feature and not an issue. because it means that you've actually looked at MediaWiki 1.43 and your code has been touched since 143 was released. And if you just have like one versioning scheme that's independent for MediaWiki, like you look at it and you're like, I don't know if this is compatible with this version. So this ensures that you'll have a current release for every single version of MediaWiki that you're compatible with.
And what would you suggest for extensions that want to be installed via Composer? Because I just checked the Semver spec, and you can't have the underscores as a valid version number. So I don't know that Composer would allow that. It says, the semver.org just says non-negative integers. So you could have like 142 with no.
Yeah, so I mean, are you allowed to have like an extra period? Could you do like 142 dot, could we do this?
It doesn't look like it.
Well, then I think Composer's dumb.
I've got to agree with Daniel here. This seems really complicated, but I think this is a good idea. It's just, I don't see an extension going through multiple breaking changes for one MediaWiki version. I know your own extensions, they are all compatible with multiple things, so why not just have like, let's say I'm on 1.39 and I'm on version 2.0.5 or whatever, and then I release a version for 1.43, why can't I just call it 1.43.2.0.6 or something, 2.1.0, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you wanted to start from a higher point than 1.0.0, that would work.
Here's the thing, right? I'm an extension maintainer. If I had to follow this, I would just stop writing my extensions, period. Because I'd be spending more brain effort on this, figuring out what version I'm on, than the actual effort I am taking to write my extension. You know what I mean? So, also, yeah, for Composer, right, there are legitimate reasons when, not just with Composer, but like NPM, yarn, right, where you have to specify like a caret or the tilde for like the specific versioning. There's a well-ordered versioning, right? And I don't know how this would fit because it's not.
So my answer would be that like right now the current situation is not good, because if you want to backport something, there's not a good way to communicate to users what version they should download. And literally, this is like, we had a conversation at dinner and tried to make it better. So if there's still problems, then I would invite you to try and also make it better.
Yeah, I think if we maybe at least start with the not resetting the major version every time, that might work. And then perhaps having like two, so for Composer, I think probably just have to ditch the major version at the beginning, but then still have the overall, double tag or whatever you want to call it, so that you can still maintain that MediaWiki version with the semantic versioning on there. But yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement, but I think the intentions are really good. There definitely are those issues. So yeah, I think this is a good start. Just some things to keep in mind.